Omega walks behind Alpha King at the Coronation feast as forgotten runes awaken beneath her feet. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Lila Montgomery and Omega walked quietly behind Alpha King Nicholas Thornfield, the ruler of their lands, at the grand coronation feast. The night was full of splendor, with chandeliers sparkling above and the distant hum of royalty and nobles murmuring excitedly about the new king's reign. Yet, despite the grandeur, Lila could not shake the heavy feeling of being invisible. She wasn't even supposed to be here, not really. The other Omegas had all been claimed, their fates intertwined with the strong alphas of their world. But not Lila. She had been overlooked, dismissed like the very stones beneath her feet. Her steps were barely noticed, her presence nothing more than a shadow among the brilliant and powerful. She kept her gaze down, her heart heavy with the weight of years spent being treated as nothing more than a second-class citizen. Omega, the lowest of the low. As the Alpha King moved through the sea of admirers, Lila walked just a few paces behind him, trailing silently, her heart pounding with a strange mix of frustration and fear. She had always been in the background, the forgotten one. But tonight, something was different. It began with a strange sensation beneath her feet, a tingling, as if the very ground was alive. Her eyes flicked down to the floor, noticing the intricate designs carved into the marble that she had never paid attention to before. The runes. They were old, ancient symbols etched deep into the stone, their lines faint but unmistakable. Lila's heart raced as the air around her seemed to hum, a pulse she could feel deep in her chest. With every step, the runes began to glow faintly, a soft golden light spreading from beneath her feet. She froze for a moment, her breath catching in her throat. What was happening? The Alpha King, too, seemed to sense it, pausing for a brief moment as he felt the power shift in the air. His piercing gaze swept across the room, finally settling on her. For a brief, terrifying moment, Lila felt the weight of his eyes, the strength of his presence. It was as if the very world had paused, and all that existed was the connection between them. But just as quickly as it began, the moment passed, and the light faded. The runes stopped glowing, leaving Lila to wonder if she had imagined it all. But she knew deep down, in the quietest corners of her soul, that something had changed. She wasn't invisible anymore. The ancient runes had awoken, and with them, something had stirred inside her, something she had yet to understand. She could feel it, just out of reach, as if the world was whispering a secret to her. She was not just an Omega. She was something more. Something destined. And as the Alpha King turned back to continue the feast, Lila followed behind him, no longer just a forgotten shadow but someone on the verge of discovering her true power. The runes beneath her feet had awakened, and with them, so had her fate. The feast continued in full swing, the voices of nobles and dignitaries filling the hall, but Lila could barely hear them over the thunderous beat of her own heart. She walked behind King Nicholas, still processing the strange occurrence beneath her feet. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the runes, their glow, and what had just happened. She had always known she was different, but this? This felt like something more, something ancient, something she could not yet comprehend. King Nicholas moved gracefully through the crowd, his presence commanding, but Lila felt no comfort in the distance between them. If anything, it made the pull she felt towards him even stronger. She had been nothing in this world, a forgotten soul. But now, something deep inside her stirred, something she couldn't ignore. As she followed him to the grand table, the whispers of the nobles seemed to die down, their gazes lingering on her, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. Lila's cheeks flushed, but she kept her head low, the weight of their attention uncomfortable. She took her seat at the far end of the table, not daring to look up at the king. But King Nicholas, who had been surrounded by his closest advisors, turned his gaze to her once more. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, everything else faded away. His sharp gaze softened, just a fraction, before he returned to his conversation. Lila quickly looked down at her hands, still feeling the warmth of his gaze. The runes had awakened something inside her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were just the beginning. The night continued on with the usual pomp and circumstance, but Lila's mind was far from the banquet. She had always felt powerless, ignored by those who mattered most. But now, it was as if the very air around her was charged with something she couldn't explain. Something that pulled her closer to the Alpha King, something that made her feel like she was more than just an Omega. The idea that she could be part of something greater than herself was both terrifying and exhilarating. As the night drew on, the festivities continued, but Lila could feel the energy in the room shifting. The runes had awakened, and she could not help but wonder if this moment would change everything. Perhaps it already had. With every passing second, she felt the pull between her and King Nicholas growing stronger. He had no idea what had happened. To him, she was just another Omega in a room full of powerful people. But to her, the evening held more significance than any coronation feast could ever have. She was no longer invisible. The awakening of the runes beneath her feet had set something in motion, something that could not be undone. As the feast wound down, Lila stood to leave, her legs trembling beneath her. She had never felt so conflicted in her life. She wanted to run, to escape the weight of the eyes upon her, but at the same time, she felt drawn to the Alpha King in a way she couldn't explain. She turned to leave the hall, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear, but just as she reached the door, a voice stopped her in her tracks. "Lila," King Nicholas called. She froze, her name hanging in the air like a spell. He stood at the head of the table, his expression unreadable, but his eyes, those silver-gray eyes, were fixed on her, intense and unwavering. She turned slowly, meeting his gaze, the entire room seeming to fall away. "You will come with me," he said, his voice calm but commanding. Lila's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she didn't know what to do. The world felt as if it were shifting around her, changing in ways she couldn't yet understand. But she knew one thing for sure: whatever was happening, whatever had awakened inside her, it was just the beginning. The Alpha King's voice echoed through the grand hall, sending a shiver down Lila's spine. "You will come with me." His words were firm, but there was an underlying force to them that made her heart race. The entire room had fallen silent, the nobles who had once been engaged in lively conversation now watching with bated breath. Lila stood frozen, her feet barely able to move as she absorbed the weight of his command. She had never felt more vulnerable, more exposed, and yet, something in her stirred. The runes, the strange sensation beneath her feet, the power that had awakened inside her, it all seemed to be pulling her in his direction. Against her better judgment, her feet moved on their own, taking her toward him, and with each step, the sensation in her chest intensified. She wasn't sure if it was fear, excitement, or something else entirely, but she couldn't deny the pull. King Nicholas stood tall and commanding, his silver-gray eyes watching her intently, waiting for her to approach. As she drew closer, she could feel his presence more acutely, the weight of his gaze making her heart beat faster. She stopped just a few feet away, feeling the cold stone of the floor beneath her feet, the glow of the runes now faint but still lingering in the air like a distant memory. For a moment, there was only silence, broken only by the soft murmurs of the crowd behind them. "Lila," he spoke again, his voice softer now, but no less authoritative. "You don't understand what just happened, do you?" She shook her head, unable to find the words. She had so many questions, so many things she needed to understand, but the words escaped her. King Nicholas studied her for a moment before stepping closer, his presence overwhelming. "The runes," he said, his tone filled with a strange intensity. "They have awakened within you. You are no longer just an Omega. You are something more." Lila's breath caught in her throat. More? What did he mean by that? Her hands clenched at her sides, and she felt a surge of emotion rise within her. She had always felt like she was nothing, like she was invisible. But now, with his words, she wondered if there was something she had been missing, something she hadn't seen in herself before. King Nicholas seemed to sense her confusion, his gaze softening just slightly. "You have power within you, power that has been dormant for far too long," he continued, his voice low and steady. "I've been searching for someone like you, someone with the ability to unlock what has been hidden for centuries. But I didn't expect it to be you. His words hung in the air like a spell, and Lila could barely breathe. Her heart raced, and her mind spun. Was this really happening? Was she truly the one he had been searching for? She had never asked for any of this. She had never asked to be special, to have powers she didn't understand. But now, with the Alpha King standing before her, everything was changing. "You'll come with me," he repeated, his voice carrying a weight of finality. "I need you, Lila. We need you." Lila stood still, trying to process everything, trying to make sense of what was happening. Her mind raced with questions, with doubts, but one thing was clear: her life was about to change. The life she had known, the life of being overlooked, of being nothing, was gone. And in its place, something far greater awaited her. King Nicholas turned in motion for her to follow him. Without another word, he began to walk, and Lila, still in a daze, followed. As they moved through the hall, she felt the eyes of the nobles upon her, but this time, it was different. They weren't just watching her, they were watching her with awe, with something like reverence. She was no longer just an Omega in the shadows. She was something more. Something powerful. And the journey ahead of her was only just beginning. As Lila followed King Nicholas through the grand halls of the palace, the weight of his presence felt almost suffocating. The nobles that once whispered and glared now parted ways for the Alpha King, some even bowing their heads in reverence, but all eyes were on Lila. She could feel their stares like 1,000 invisible needles pricking at her skin, but this time, something inside her had shifted. She didn't feel like the invisible Omega anymore. The feeling that had awoken inside her when the runes glowed beneath her feet was still present, like an undercurrent in the air, pulling her forward. It was as if the ground itself was guiding her to her fate. King Nicholas led her through corridors lined with tapestries and gold, his steps steady, but there was an intensity to his silence that made her heart race. They reached a large door at the end of a hall, its wood carved with intricate symbols and runes similar to the ones she had felt earlier. The door opened with a creak, revealing a room bathed in soft candlelight. A large stone table sat at the center, and shelves lined the walls, filled with ancient scrolls and tomes. This was not just a room for ordinary matters, this was a place of knowledge, of power. "Sit," King Nicholas said, gesturing to a chair at the table. His voice was calm but carried an air of authority. Lila did as instructed, her legs trembling slightly as she took her seat. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She had so many questions, so many doubts, but one thing was certain: her life was changing. The king moved to a desk in the corner of the room, where he began to unroll one of the ancient scrolls. "You are wondering why I brought you here," he began, his voice cutting through the silence. Lila nodded, her throat dry. "Yes," she managed to whisper. "You were not chosen by chance, Lila," King Nicholas said, his back still turned as he examined the scroll. "The runes that you awakened tonight were not meant to be activated by just anyone. They are a symbol of an ancient bond, one that has been forgotten by most of our kind." He turned to face her, his piercing eyes meeting hers. "And you, Lila, are the key." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and Lila felt a shiver run down her spine. "The key?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "To what?" King Nicholas took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "To breaking the curse that has plagued our people for centuries," he said quietly. "To unlocking the true power that lies within you." Lila's heart pounded in her chest. A curse? She had always thought she was powerless, but now the king was saying that she held the power to break something ancient, something dark. "I don't understand," she whispered. King Nicholas smiled faintly, as if he had expected her confusion. "You will. In time." He moved to the shelf behind her, pulling down a thick book bound in leather. He flipped through the pages until he found the one he was searching for. "The curse," he said, showing her the page. "It was placed upon our people by an ancient force, one that seeks to keep us divided, to keep the Alphas and Omegas from realizing their true potential." Lila leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "What does that have to do with me?" she asked. "You are not just an ordinary Omega, Lila," King Nicholas said, his voice low and serious. "The runes, the power within you, it is the key to ending the curse. It was meant to awaken in you. And now that it has, there is no turning back. Lila's mind was spinning, trying to process the enormity of what he was saying. She had always been overlooked, always seen as weak, but now she was the key to something greater, something that could change everything. The weight of the king's words pressed down on her, but at the same time, she felt something stirring inside her, a fire that she had never known existed. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she said softly, the uncertainty in her voice evident. King Nicholas looked at her with an intensity that took her breath away. "You don't have to be ready," he said. "The power inside you is awakening, whether you are prepared for it or not. But together, we can control it. Together, we can break the curse." Lila's heart skipped a beat. She had never been asked to do anything this important, this powerful. She had never been chosen for something before. But now, standing before the Alpha King, she felt like her entire life had led to this moment. She had no choice but to trust him. And maybe, just maybe, trust herself as well. King Nicholas stepped back, allowing the weight of his words to settle in the air between them. Lila's mind was still reeling from what he had said. She had been chosen, but for what? To break a curse that had lasted for centuries? She was just an Omega, someone who had always been ignored, overlooked, and now she was being told she held the key to something far beyond her understanding. "I don't know if I can do this," Lila said, her voice trembling slightly, though she tried to hide it. King Nicholas studied her with a calm intensity, his silver-gray eyes piercing through her uncertainty. "You don't have to do it alone," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "I will be with you every step of the way." Lila swallowed, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within her. She had spent so long in the shadows, never expecting anyone to stand beside her. But here, with King Nicholas, she felt as if, for the first time in her life, she was truly seen. He stepped toward her, his presence overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. "The power within you is not something you can control yet," he said softly. "But you will learn, Lila. You will grow into it." She nodded slowly, still unsure but willing to trust him. After all, what choice did she have? The only thing she knew for sure was that she couldn't go back to the life she had before. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice steadier than before. King Nicholas gave her a small smile, though there was something guarded in his expression. "Now, we begin the process of unlocking your power. The runes are just the beginning. They are a key, a marker, but they are not the whole story." He turned to the desk, picking up a smaller scroll, this one bound in red leather. He unrolled it slowly, as if it were something fragile, and handed it to Lila. "This is an ancient text," he said. "It speaks of the curse, of how it can be broken, and of the role you will play in that. I have studied it for years, but it has always been incomplete. Until now." Lila took the scroll, her fingers brushing against the worn leather. She could feel the weight of the history in her hands, the centuries of knowledge and secrets that had been hidden away. She opened it carefully, her eyes scanning the pages, filled with symbols and words. She could barely understand. "I'll help you decipher it," King Nicholas said, his voice low and steady as he watched her. "But first, we need to prepare you. The curse is not something that can be undone overnight." Lila looked up at him, a mix of fear and determination in her eyes. "How do we start?" she asked. "First, you need to understand the runes," he replied. "They are not just symbols, they are connected to your very soul. When you stepped on them tonight, you awakened a bond that was sealed long ago. We need to strengthen that connection, unlock the full potential of the power inside you." Lila's heart raced again as the weight of his words sank in. She had always felt small, insignificant, but now she was being told she held the power to change everything. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered, her voice cracking despite herself. King Nicholas stepped closer, his gaze softening, his hand hovering near her shoulder as if he wanted to comfort her but wasn't sure how. "You are more ready than you think," he said quietly. "You've been chosen for this, Lila. You have the strength inside you, even if you can't see it yet." The words, simple as they were, felt like a lifeline to her. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "All right," she said, her voice stronger now. "Let's do this." With that, the two of them began their work, poring over the ancient scrolls and texts, deciphering the runes and learning the secrets hidden in the symbols. As the night wore on, Lila felt something stirring within her, a warmth that spread through her chest, down to her hands, as though the power was slowly waking up inside her. It was a strange feeling, both exhilarating and terrifying. But she couldn't turn back now. She had a purpose, something greater than herself to fight for. And with King Nicholas by her side, she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could fulfill it. As the days passed, Lila and King Nicholas continued their work together, delving deeper into the ancient texts and uncovering more secrets of the curse that had plagued their people for centuries. The palace became their shared space, filled with the quiet rustle of scrolls and the soft murmur of their voices as they read and discussed the forgotten knowledge. Lila's mind was racing, trying to absorb everything, trying to understand how the power inside her could be the key to breaking something so ancient and deeply rooted. Every evening, she felt the power within her stir, a faint warmth spreading through her as she unlocked more of the rune's meanings. King Nicholas was patient with her, never rushing, always guiding her when she needed it, but always leaving room for her to discover the depth of her own strength. He never treated her as just an omega. To him, she was the key to something far greater. And Lila couldn't help but feel the weight of that responsibility pressing down on her. It was both empowering and terrifying. One evening, as they worked late into the night, Lila felt a surge of energy unlike anything she had experienced before. The runes on the pages seemed to glow with a soft light, and she could feel the warmth in her chest grow stronger. She looked up at King Nicholas, who had been studying a separate text, and saw the slight shift in his expression. "It's happening," he said quietly, his voice filled with awe. Lila's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. King Nicholas stood and walked over to her, his eyes intense. "The power within you, it's awakening in full now. You're starting to understand it, Lila. You're starting to control it." She swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly. She wasn't sure if she was ready for this, but at the same time, a part of her couldn't deny the pull of the power inside her. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. King Nicholas smiled, a look of both pride and seriousness in his eyes. "Now, we prepare for the next step. The runes are the key, but they are only the beginning. There is something more we need to do, something that will require all of your strength." He paused, as if measuring his words carefully. "You'll need to go to the heart of the kingdom, to the place where the curse began. Only there will we be able to fully break it." Lila's heart skipped a beat. "The heart of the kingdom?" she asked, her voice tight with uncertainty. "Yes," King Nicholas said, his tone firm. "It's where the source of the curse lies. It's a dangerous journey, but it is the only way. And you are the only one who can make it." Lila felt a lump form in her throat. She had never been on a journey like this before. She had never been asked to do something so important, so powerful. "How do we even begin?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We'll leave at dawn," King Nicholas said, his voice calm. "You are ready, Lila? We'll face whatever comes together." Lila nodded, though her mind was still spinning. She had always been overlooked, but now she was about to embark on a journey that could change everything. The fate of their people rested in her hands. As the night stretched on, Lila sat in silence, the weight of King Nicholas's words heavy in her chest. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but she knew one thing for sure: there was no turning back. This was her path now. And with the Alpha King by her side, she would face whatever came next. The first rays of dawn crept through the tall windows of the palace, casting long shadows on the stone floor. Lila stood before the massive door of the castle, her heart pounding in her chest. King Nicholas stood beside her, his face set with determination, but she could see the slight tension in his posture, a reflection of the gravity of what lay ahead. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Her hands were still trembling slightly, but she forced herself to focus. This was the moment. There was no turning back. "Are you ready?" King Nicholas asked, his voice calm but with an edge of something deeper, perhaps the weight of the responsibility he carried for them both. Lila nodded, though doubt still churned inside her. She had never imagined she would find herself on such a path, standing at the threshold of destiny. But the power within her, the runes, had been awakening in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. What they were about to do could change everything. "I don't know what to expect," Lila admitted softly, her voice barely a whisper. "But I trust you," she added, more to reassure herself than him. King Nicholas's silver-gray eyes softened just slightly as he turned to face her. "You're not alone in this, Lila," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "We face this together. Every step of the way." She took a steadying breath and stepped forward, her feet moving with more confidence now. The door loomed before her, and she couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. As she reached for the handle, the door creaked open slowly, revealing the vast expanse of the kingdom beyond. They were about to enter the heart of the kingdom, the place where the curse had begun, where the source of everything, the ancient power, lay hidden. The journey would be long, and the road uncertain. But Lila knew one thing for sure: she couldn't face it alone, and neither could King Nicholas. They needed each other. With that thought in mind, she stepped through the door, into the unknown. The air outside was cool and fresh, the sky painted with hues of orange and pink as the sun began to rise higher. King Nicholas's presence beside her was a constant, reassuring anchor, even as the uncertainty of their task ahead loomed large. They moved forward, their footsteps steady on the cobblestone path, leading them away from the palace and into the wilderness. Lila glanced at him once more, and for the first time, she saw something different in his eyes. It wasn't just authority or power, it was a glimpse of something softer, a trust, a partnership that had formed between them over the past few days. "We'll make it," he said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "I promise you, Lila, we will break this curse." His words settled in her heart, filling her with a sense of purpose she hadn't known she could feel. She wasn't just a forgotten Omega anymore. She was part of something greater, a force that could reshape the fate of their people. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the kingdom, the world around them seemed to change. The trees grew taller, their branches heavy with leaves that whispered in the wind. The air was thick with magic, and Lila could feel the runes inside her stirring once more, their power rising within her. The closer they got to their destination, the stronger the pull became, like a magnetic force drawing her in. She didn't understand it yet, but she could feel the energy surging around her, weaving its way through her body, through her very soul. "Do you feel it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. King Nicholas nodded, his expression solemn. "Yes," he said, his voice quiet but certain. "It's the magic. It's awakening. And we're almost there." Lila's heart raced as they continued down the path, the sense of something ancient, something powerful, growing with every step. She didn't know what they would find when they reached the heart of the kingdom, but she knew that it was where everything would change. She could only hope that, together, they would be strong enough to face whatever came next. The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: she was no longer just an Omega. She was the key to breaking the curse, and with King Nicholas by her side, she was ready to face whatever awaited them. The path ahead grew steeper as they ventured deeper into the heart of the kingdom. The trees towered above them, their thick branches forming a canopy that blocked out most of the sunlight, leaving the ground in a cool, dappled shadow. The air smelled of earth and moss, a scent Lila found strangely comforting, as though the very land beneath her feet was alive, watching them. With each step, the pull of the magic grew stronger, and Lila could feel the runes inside her stirring once again, as though they were waking up with every passing moment. King Nicholas walked beside her, his stride confident, but Lila could see the tension in his posture. He had been calm and reassuring up until now, but the closer they got to their destination, the more his composed exterior seemed to crack. "Do you think we're ready for this?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper as they walked. King Nicholas glanced at her, his silver-gray eyes narrowing as he considered the question. "I've been ready for this for a long time," he said, his voice low but firm. "But even I don't know what we'll find once we reach the heart of the kingdom." Lila nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She, too, had no idea what to expect. All she knew was that this was the moment that could change everything. The curse had lingered over their people for generations, and now, she was the one who had to break it. There was a sense of inevitability about it, but at the same time, the fear of the unknown made her heart Race. We'll face it together, King Nicholas added, as though reading her thoughts. Whatever comes, we do it side by side. Lila offered him a small, grateful smile, though the doubt still lingered in the back of her mind. The path ahead seemed endless, and the weight of their mission pressed down on her shoulders. After what felt like hours, they finally reached the clearing at the center of the kingdom. The trees parted to reveal an ancient stone structure, half covered in moss and vines, its jagged edges worn smooth by time. At the heart of the structure was a large stone pedestal, its surface etched with more runes, much like the ones Lila had seen before. As they stepped into the clearing, Lila felt the magic intensify, the runes beneath her skin glowing faintly in response. She could feel the connection between them, the ancient bond that had been waiting to be unlocked. King Nicholas stopped beside her, his expression somber as he took in the sight of the pedestal. "This is it," he said quietly. "The source of the curse. And the key to breaking it." Lila took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She stepped forward, her feet moving of their own accord, as if the runes themselves were guiding her. As she reached the pedestal, the ground beneath her seemed to hum with energy. The runes on the stone glowed brighter, their intricate patterns shifting and swirling as if alive. "Place your hand on the pedestal," King Nicholas instructed, his voice steady but filled with an underlying urgency. Lila hesitated for only a moment before she reached out and placed her palm on the cool stone. As soon as her skin made contact, a surge of energy shot through her, filling her with warmth and light. The runes inside her flared to life, their power growing stronger, and for a brief moment, Lila felt as though she was part of something much larger than herself. The pedestal began to glow, its light enveloping her in a bright, radiant aura. She could hear whispers in the air, ancient voices speaking in a language she couldn't understand. But the words felt familiar, as though they were calling her home. "This is it," Lila whispered, her voice trembling as the power surged within her. "I can feel it. The curse, it's breaking." King Nicholas stepped closer, his hand resting on her shoulder, his presence grounding her. "You're doing it, Lila," he said, his voice filled with awe. "You're breaking the curse." Lila nodded, her eyes wide with wonder as the light around them grew brighter, the runes on the pedestal spinning faster and faster. The ancient magic that had held their people captive for so long was finally being undone, and it was all because of her. As the light reached its peak, the energy suddenly dissipated, leaving the clearing in a quiet stillness. Lila stood there, her breath coming in ragged gasps, feeling a deep sense of relief wash over her. She had done it. The curse had been broken. But as the silence settled around them, Lila felt a new weight in the air, a sense of something unfinished. She turned to King Nicholas, who was looking at her with a mixture of pride and concern. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. King Nicholas didn't answer immediately. He looked at the pedestal, then back at her, his expression unreadable. "The curse is broken," he said, his voice heavy. "But there's still much to be done. The magic has shifted, Lila. We've only just begun to uncover the truth." Lila's heart sank. She had broken the curse, but it seemed there was more to their journey than she had realized. And with King Nicholas by her side, she knew they would have to face whatever came next together. As the light from the pedestal slowly faded, the clearing remained eerily quiet. Lila stood motionless, her hands still resting on the stone, the weight of what she had just done settling heavily in her chest. The curse was broken, but the air was thick with a sense of something unresolved. King Nicholas, who had been standing a few paces behind her, stepped forward, his face a mask of mixed emotions. His silver-gray eyes were filled with pride, but there was something else there, something uncertain. Lila slowly withdrew her hand from the pedestal, and as she did, the runes on the stone faded, their glow dimming until it was nothing but an ordinary slab of ancient rock. She felt the power that had surged within her begin to ebb, but it left a trace, an energy that lingered deep inside her, a connection to something greater than herself. "You did it," King Nicholas said. Quietly, his voice full of awe. "The curse has been broken." His words echoed in the stillness, and for a moment, it felt like time had paused. Lila nodded slowly, trying to wrap her mind around what had just happened. She had done it, she had broken the curse that had haunted their people for centuries. But why did it still feel like there was more to be done? But, something feels off, Lila murmured, her voice laced with uncertainty. What happens now? King Nicholas's expression darkened slightly as he looked at the pedestal, his brows furrowing. The curse is broken, yes, he said, his voice steady. But there are layers to this. What we did here today, it was just the beginning. Lila turned to him, her heart racing again. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling. The magic has shifted, he explained, his voice low. The curse may be gone, but its effects run deep. There are things we haven't fully uncovered yet, things that will require us to go even further. Lila swallowed, the weight of his words pressing down on her. What are we supposed to do now? She asked, feeling a mix of fear and determination. King Nicholas stepped closer to her, his gaze never leaving hers. We will find the truth, he said firmly. We'll uncover the rest of the magic that's been hidden for so long. And you, Lila, are the key. You always have been. The intensity in his voice sent a shiver down Lila's spine. She had never thought of herself as anything more than an Omega, weak, overlooked, and forgotten. But now, with the Alpha King's words, she felt something inside her shift. She wasn't just an Omega anymore. She had power. And it was a power that could change everything. King Nicholas reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip gentle but strong. We're not finished yet, he said softly. There is more to this than breaking the curse. There are ancient truths that need to be uncovered. And together, we will face whatever comes next. Lila nodded, taking a deep breath as she looked at him. For the first time, she truly believed him. She had always been afraid of the unknown, but now, with King Nicholas by her side, she felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. The road ahead was still uncertain. But she was no longer afraid to face it. Let's uncover the truth, she said, her voice steady and filled with resolve. King Nicholas smiled, a small but genuine expression of approval. Together, he said, and they both turned toward the path ahead. The journey was far from over, but Lila was no longer walking it alone. She had found her purpose, and with it, the strength to face whatever challenges lay in their future. The magic that had been awakened within her was only just beginning to reveal its full power, and Lila was ready to embrace it. As they walked away from the pedestal, the sun began to rise higher in the sky, casting its warm light over the land. The curse had been broken, but the real journey, one of discovery, of truth, and of power, was just beginning.